Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth TRIG, or Truck Regulation Implementation Group meeting that's focusing on infrastructure. We are just getting started today. My name is Leslie Goodbody. I am the staff lead on this effort at CARB. We have a few co-chairs in the room also. Let's wave your hands a little bit. We have Annalisa Bevan, who is my manager, Mark Perry from the California Energy Commission, and I'm not sure if Adam Browning is here today, but that is one of the other co-chairs. So let's just get right to it. I'm going to first do a recap of our last meetings. Our first TRIG meeting back, I think, is in December, focused on setting our discussion topics for future TRIG meetings. At TRIG number 2, we had a combined meeting with the rules provision TRIG to discuss the Advanced Clean Fleets infrastructure delay extension provision. In TRIG number 3, we focused on funding and financing sources for ZEV infrastructure for medium and heavy duty vehicles. And at that meeting, concerns were raised about the cost and reliability of network charging compared to non-network charging. And we sort of believe that this kind of needed further exploration. So for those in the room that are not aware of this terminology, network charging stations are connected remotely to a larger network and are part of a system of connected chargers. As such, the chargers have remote access to online management tools through an online portal. Non-network charging stations are standalone units that are not part of a network and are not accessible remotely. So in this meeting, we're going to be kind of digging into this a little bit further. Jeffrey Liu from the Energy Commission is going to give us an overview of California's reliability and networking requirements for EV chargers, specifically focusing on the chargers for heavy-duty vehicles. Then Sam Bersolati will talk about Terawatt's strategy for meeting the requirements with network charging, followed by Matt Zarega from Terra Verde, who's going to talk about cases where reporting and reliability standards can be met with non-network charging. After that, we're going to learn from our fleet stakeholders through active participation, what they feel is most important and what they expect from public and private charging infrastructure. So before we start, Isaac, I'm sorry, wanted to make sure you got on the agenda slide. So go to the slide number 2, please. Yeah, this slide deck, along with a recording of this meeting, is going to be posted on our meetings and events calendar for the September 5th meeting. It's the same meetings and events calendar where we post absolutely everything. So by now, our participants should be pretty aware where to find that. But we will, if anybody has questions, just let us know. And so at the end of each presentation, we're going to open for clarifying questions, and then we're going to have a focused discussion at the end. So Jeffrey, are you here? Turn your camera on.
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, everybody.
Yay. So I'm just doing an introduction for you. You can probably go to the next slide. Jeffrey is joined the CEC in 2020. And Jeffrey's work at the CNC focuses on ensuring that EV charging infrastructure is interoperable, grid-friendly, and a better experience than refueling with fossil fuels. Why don't I just turn off my mic and camera? I'm going to let Jeffrey take it away with his presentation.
All right, thanks, Leslie. Thanks for having me. Isaac, just letting you know, it's not in full screen mode. It's probably okay as is, but it's only showing like 2/3 of the screen. Hey everyone, I'm Jeffrey. I'm staff at the CEC. Thanks for having me today. And so today I've been asked to provide an overview about the charger reliability regulations that are being developed by the CEC, as well as when charger networking could make sense for folks. So next slide, please. For today's agenda, I'll go over some guiding principles when it comes to EV charging at the CEC. I'll talk about our upcoming charger reliability regulations as they're currently being developed. That'll be followed by charger networking use cases. So basically why charger networking might make sense for your particular project. And then at the end, we can have some time for questions, and it sounds like discussion will be at the end of all the presentations. Next slide, please. So first, the CC has a couple guiding principles when it comes to EV charging activities, and we refer to these whenever there's sort of some big decision point and how we want to think about that. The first is that EV charging needs to be accessible and reliable. And this means a couple different things. It means that you need to be able to easily be able to access chargers. So maybe this is you having access to chargers at home or at work, or if it's not at home or work, that you don't have to go very far to find one, right? Nobody should be driving an hour to find a charger. It also means that you need to be able to easily identify which chargers, especially if they're away from home, are the ones that are appropriate for you. There could be voltage level considerations, there could be connector type considerations, or maybe you just want to be sure that the charger is actually currently available, right? You might not want to navigate to a fully occupied station. Of course, once you show up to that charger, we want the charging session to be reliable. You should be able to get a successful charge from that charger when you plug in. In the middle, we have user-friendly. So in addition to having those chargers exist and working, we want that charging experience to be good and better than refueling with gas. We're not quite there yet. We're making a lot of headway, but we're looking toward a future where folks will not need multiple apps to be able to pay or access chargers that are already out there. We're looking at a future where you will be able to pay with a payment method of your choice. And ideally, for a lot of folks, this is going to be a feature called plug and charge. So this is where your vehicle acts as the payment method. So the moment you plug in, it starts charging, it processes the payment. You didn't have to take out your wallet, any apps, any key cards, any phone. And finally, we need charging to be grid friendly. We're asking a lot of the grid over the next few decades as we electrify a lot of transportation and other building loads. And we need to be doing everything we can to maximize the existing infrastructure that's already available to us. So this means ensuring that new load is added onto the grid at grid-friendly times. It means that new load is added onto the grid in areas of the grid of the distribution system that actually have that capacity. Again, the idea here is to minimize costs, maximize the amount of deployment we can do in a short amount of time by being grid-friendly. Next slide, please. All right, so a couple of years ago, the legislature passed AB 2061, and this directs the CEC to develop charger reliability regulations. The top line idea here is that chargers which are funded with public money, so your tax dollars, your fee dollars, those chargers should work and they should work well. And so we've developed a regulation. This is currently a proposal, and we're actually going to be issuing our final proposal probably in the next month or so. But I just want to highlight a couple of the key things from the proposal. The first is that if you're a publicly funded public charger, you need to be sharing data about your charger via an API, application programming interface, to other map developers or app developers. And the idea here is that mapping applications and other apps will be able to access like basic information about your charger. What's the address? What's the pricing throughout the day? What's the status? Is it being currently used? And so forth. The idea here is to help folks be able to locate a charger. It's not just enough to install the charger. Folks need to be able to easily locate a charger that's appropriate for them. We're also implementing charger uptime and successful charge rate metrics as part of this regulation. So we're setting minimum uptime targets of 97% and successful charge rate targets of 90%. Uptime is is basically the time that your charger is functional, whereas successful charge rate is you actually getting a charge into your vehicle. Just because a charger is functional doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be able to get a successful charge. There could be other reasons that impede you from being able to get that successful charge on the first attempt. And finally, I think probably the biggest thing in our charger reliability regulation is that we're going to standardize the measurement and reporting for these reliability metrics. I think we all see the numbers from individual companies that claim that we're doing great. We have high uptime, we have high reliability. That's all fine and dandy. We're going to standardize how we want to measure this and how we want this reported to us. And that's going to leverage a communication protocol called Open Charge Point Protocol, OCPP. This is already widely used in industry as a de facto standard for communication between chargers and their management systems. And what we're going to be doing is pulling logs that are generated by OCPP for chargers and using specific messages in those logs to calculate uptime and successful charge rate. This allows us to compare folks on an apples to apples basis, right? This is no longer folks claiming, based on their own methodology of uptime and successful charge rate. We can do it on a way that's comparable across different brands in different networks. Next slide, please. As part of the regulation, we do recognize that there are non-network chargers and there are network chargers, and that these different chargers need different approaches. Non-network chargers may not be collecting logs, and if they are, they're certainly not reporting them to you on an automated basis. And so for non-network charging, they're still going to be subject to like those uptime numbers, but we're going to be reliant on the charger operator and site host to be able to track and report that uptime. So that site host or their designee, they're going to be the ones responsible for noticing, hey, the charger was down for 3 hours today, logging that, and then reporting that to the CC at the appropriate reporting interval. With network chargers, a lot of this can be automated, and so it will be automated. We're going to have folks report the raw OCPP logs to us on an automated basis, and we have reporting intervals for that are more stringent than what we have for non-network chargers. And we're going to be doing the calculations on our end for uptime and successful charge rate. So there are many other details in this regulation. You can go read the full text if you want. But the summary is that as part of this regulation, we are for the first time setting minimum, not for the first time, for the first time in regulation, setting minimum performance targets for publicly funded chargers. We're standardizing the way that we're collecting reliability data and how that should be reported. So again, with network chargers, that's using OCPP. With non-network chargers, that's sort of more manual. And importantly, all of this is going to provide consistent and apples to apples comparable data that we can use to inform future policies. It seems like every other person and their mother has a story about how charging away from home didn't work. And we actually have a pretty good list of potential root causes, but actually ascribing what proportion of which particular root cause contributes to what proportion of failures, we don't have as much data on that. And this data is going to help us prioritize what next steps are needed in policy or other actions to improve reliability of charging. Next slide, please. So shifting gears away from reliability into charger networking, I'm going to cover some potential uses for charger networking and what it is. So what is network charging? Network chargers are basically chargers that communicate with a central management system, so some backend software. Typically, this is done over the internet. And so if you have a project, how you want to connect those chargers to the internet may depend on your site and the location of your site. So it could make sense to throw in a SIM card, connect over cellular. Maybe you want to do wired over Ethernet. You might want to do Wi-Fi. Those are all sort of project-dependent aspects. Earlier, we were talking about OCPP. Any charger that can communicate using OCPP is a network-capable charger. So if that OCPP charger is connected to the internet, it is a network charger. One nuance I want to highlight is that you can run a network-capable charger, such as an OCPP charger, without connecting it to the internet. You can still get a charge from it. Of course, you're not going to get a lot of those network-based capabilities. But if you're at a site that doesn't have internet today, and maybe you expect internet at some later point, you could potentially say, I'm going to buy a network-capable charger and just run it as a non-network charger to start. That is an option for you. So why are we talking about networking at all? The main reason is because it does bring potential benefits for your project site. And I'm going to highlight 3. That's billing, diagnostics, and site load management. For each of the following slides, I'm going to go into each of these in a little bit more detail and show you some practical examples of that. Next slide, please. All right. First example, I won't dwell on this one too long because I think it's fairly straightforward, is just the ability to collect payment for charging. There are many ways you can collect payment for charging, but network chargers enable you to do this fairly easily. You don't necessarily need additional payment collection hardware. You don't necessarily need someone to put in labor to act as a cashier or anything like that. So there are many practical examples of why somebody might want to do this. Maybe you're an apartment manager and you want to offer pay level 2 charging for your residents, but you don't want to modify your rent collection systems. You can use network chargers and whatever app is available through that network charger to collect payment. That is one option. If you're managing a grocery store and you have, like a 200 kilowatt charger at your loading dock that you sometimes use, and you also allow visiting trucks to use, maybe they need to charge, maybe they need to power their TRU. This is going to be a lot of energy that's delivered through that charger. You probably want to recover some of that cost. Here again, you can use a network charger to be able to collect that payment from all the different potential users that show up, right? These might not be your employees. These might be various different fleets that have to make deliveries to you. Earlier, we were talking about plug and charge, where the vehicle acts as the payment method and the driver no longer has to pull out their app, phone, card, whatever else. That's the Tesla experience today. That's expanding to many other passenger EVs. There's no reason that medium and heavy duty trucks shouldn't have this experience as well. Finally, very similar example, the third one, if you have a distribution warehouse and you have multiple high power chargers out front that you're going to offer to all the different owner operator truckers that might visit your warehouse to make deliveries or pick up deliveries, again, you can use network charging to pretty easily and quickly enable payment collection. Next slide, please. So that was the first example of potential use cases that can be offered by network charging. Another one that I want to talk about is for logging, diagnostics, and troubleshooting. So network chargers can save logs that you can dig into for diagnostics. You can also set network chargers to notify you if certain parameter thresholds are exceeded. And these will be recorded in your logs, but maybe you want to know about this, the moment that it happens. So here are two examples of when this might be useful to you. So say you manage a fleet, you have a fleet yard, 20 trucks, 20 chargers, and you and your drivers have been operating their routes with no issue for like 6 months. But then one day, one of your drivers returns from their route and they tell you, hey, usually I get back with like 30 miles of range. Today, I was like pushing 10. Like it was cutting it close. It was kind of uncomfortable. I think something happened last night with charging and something broke or didn't work as expected. So you can, from your office, pull up all the OCPP logs, figure out which charger that truck was plugged into the night before. You don't have to go into each charger individually to check. You just look at all the logs. Okay, you've identified the correct charger that the truck was plugged into. You pull the log for that particular charger, you check the error codes, and that log might actually tell you that, hey, charging power was throttled last night because of cable over temperature. That's an error code. This could have happened for a variety of reasons. Maybe you're in Phoenix in the summer and it was just really hot overnight, or maybe there is actually something wrong with the cable, like it's aging faster than you might expect. So you can call out a tech, tell the tech, hey, we got a cable over temperature problem, bring a spare cable with you in case you need to make that repair so you don't have to go back and do another visit. And you were able to do all this from the comfort of your own office. You didn't have to go out, inspect each one individually. You were able to identify the issue, the problem charger and the specific problem that the charger thinks occurred, again, all from just your charger management system. You didn't have to leave and do anything. So that's one potential benefit that can be afforded if you have network charging. Another one, if you don't want to dig into logs and you just want notifications. So say you operate a medium heavy duty public charging station and you get a notification on your charger management dashboard that the tilt sensor on a charger is activated. The tilt sensor activates when it's rotated 90 degrees. So that probably means your charger is rotated 90 degrees, which probably means it's been knocked over, it's been hit. So here again, you call out a tech, you say, hey, we think a charger's been hit, it's like knocked over, maybe bring along a replacement charger in case it does need to be swapped out. Again, here, you were able to get all of this information done from the comfort of your own office. You didn't have to do a site visit. You didn't need a customer to put in a problem ticket. You didn't need somebody to call in and complain. You were notified about this the moment it happened. This is potentially a good way to help ensure that you have high charger uptime and that you have a better customer experience by making sure that problems are addressed before your customers even find out about them. Next slide, please. The last use case I want to talk about with charger networking today is dynamic load management. So basically your central management system that's connected to all your chargers, it can manage the load across all those chargers for a variety of reasons. Maybe you're responding to a grid signal. Maybe you're responding to a local site electrical constraint like a panel capacity constraint, or maybe there's on-site generation you want to optimize around, or potentially it's all three of these. Like these three examples I'm going to walk through, they could all happen at the same time at the same site. So many electricity rates have demand charges. These are charges that are levied based on the highest level of power that you draw over your billing period. And so you might want to avoid demand charges by staying below that next threshold where your charge goes up. So maybe your next threshold is 100 kilowatts. You can set that in your charger management system, and it'll make sure that your chargers in total never exceed 100 kilowatts. Maybe if you're only charging at 1 or 2 connectors, you can go full blast power, no problem. You're not going to cross that threshold. But when all 10 or 20 of your chargers are in use, that's when your charger management system is going to kick in and say, hey, we actually want to stay below 100 kilowatts, and this is going to result in significant savings for you on your electricity bill. Another example, maybe you have a warehouse with rooftop solar and also level 2 chargers for your employees. And maybe you just want to maximize the amount of charging that happens on excess solar generation, right? You don't want to pay for extra electricity to charge your employees' vehicles. And so you can connect your charger management system to your solar inverter. And whenever there's excess generation, say, run those chargers at full blast. When this might happen could depend from day to day, right? Like if you're pulling air conditioning in your warehouse, maybe you don't actually have excess generation that day and you do want to pull from the grid instead. If it's cloudy, maybe your excess generation is a bit lower than usual. But your network, your charger management system, you can set the parameters for how you want to optimize around excess solar generation at your site. And finally, the last example I think is actually increasingly important, especially for big sites and sites and for fleets who are trying to electrify. Many fleets, you have an existing location, and that location may be served by a portion of the distribution system that is somewhat constrained. Like maybe you say, I want 100 kilowatts of charging at the site, and the utility will come back and say, we don't actually have that. And your options are you just don't electrify, or maybe you wait for a grid upgrade, and that can take several years. Increasingly, an option that utilities are offering is called flexible connection. So you still want that 100 kilowatts. The utility might say, we can give you 100 kilowatts for like 350 days of the year, no problem. But those remaining 15 days of the year, there are going to be certain hours that we know we're going to be constrained, and you're going to have to pull back to 80 or maybe 60 kilowatts. We don't know what those hours are or days are in advance. So we need to communicate with you on, like a semi-real time or like a daily basis, so that you respect those limits on those days. And if you agree to this flexible connection, you can get energized today. You don't have to wait for a grid upgrade. So this is great because it saves you time. It also maximizes the use of the existing infrastructure we have so that we don't have to build out grid that we don't need to build out. Here, the charger management system and your network chargers can all communicate to ensure that they never exceed this limit, and that limit may change from day to day or hour to hour. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is my last one. So these are like potential benefits of network charging. You may not need these at your site, but if you want any of these things that are highlighted in that green box at your site, you might want to think about network charging. It could be useful for you. I'll also note that the more these bullets that you are checking off, like these are all things that you want, the more that you're checking off, the more likely that you probably want network charging. Like you can make this work without using a network charger, but it's going to get increasingly complicated with additional components, boxes, management systems that you may have to install otherwise. Next slide. That is all I have. So any immediate clarifying questions about the content that I discussed today?
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Isaac, I'm going to ask you to stop doing the screen share so that we can open up for questions from our panelists. Panelists, please use the raise hand feature if you have questions specifically for Jeffrey on this. And then if you are in the audience, please type your question into the Q&A feature. And so we will try to work through these the best that we can in the time that we have. So I'm going to start with, so anyway, Isaac, if you wouldn't mind stopping the screen share. Thank you. Sam, you're the first one on the list.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Really appreciate the presentation. I just wanted to seek clarification on one thing. The application of this draft regulation, it applies to more than ratepayer and state-funded chargers. Our read of the draft regulation is that it would also apply to, at least in the heavy-duty space, private and shared facilities as well. Is that correct?
So there are a couple different buckets in the regulation, and it's pretty nuanced, and there are tables in the regulation that summarize this. But basically, the bulk of the reliability and reporting requirements only apply to chargers that are ratepayer or publicly funded. Whether that charger is a publicly available charger or if it's a behind the fence charger, there's no distinction made there. So if you're a publicly funded behind the fence charger, like CEC funding was used to build your behind the fence charger, you would still be those reporting and reliability minimum uptime requirements and so forth would still apply to you. For all other charges that aren't publicly funded or ratepayer funded, there may be some inventory reporting requirements, but there's not going to be like those reliability requirements applicable to you. Does that help? Thanks, Sam.
Lisa? Okay, Lisa, have you figured it out? Okay, good.
I figured it out. Yeah, believe it or not. So I have a question as it relates to the timelines that you brought up for the reliability. What are those specific? I'd like to make sure that we've got a definition for those expectations, like for fault 1, fault 2, or fault 3. And then what is the enforcement and ramifications for those that don't? Because as you explained, these are necessary to continue to improve what we've already developed.
Yeah, so I'm actually not the best person at the CC to talk about the regulation, but so the regulation, what is currently publicly available is the second draft of the regulation. We've actually wrapped up the final proposal that we think is probably going to be published sometime in the next 30 days or so. Once that goes out, it'll go through this whole Office of Administrative Law process to actually formalize it into a regulation. So I think the regulation, barring some extenuating circumstances, is likely to become finalized sometime next year. As written, a lot of the provisions regarding like reliability reporting and uptime requirements, those will begin applying, I think. Actually, I'm not going to say that because I'm not sure, but like, yeah, so the regulation should be finalized next year. And then most of the compliance deadlines that are going to be applicable that are listed in the publicly available draft today are going to be the same as the ones that we're going to propose in the final proposal. Does that answer your question?
Well, I guess partially. So I get that you don't have the information specifically. So I would love to see if we could get in the chat some information related to participating so that we could give feedback during the public process. And what I'd like to see when it comes to this process is that in CARB's vehicle OEM space, they realized they were facing somewhat of the same issues related to uptime or the OEM not even being able to live its own useful life of its own equipment because it came and went. And so they developed the zero emission powertrain certification program, which went into effect in 2023 model years. Those particular pieces of equipment, if not certified to that standard, are not in HFIP. And so that standard requires sharing of diagnostic tools and equipment. And then you also have to share that at a price to the dealers so that the uptime and the programs continue to grow beyond the OEM that may not be able to be around. And because we're still in a nascent. So I'd love to see something copied for the OEM side of charger equipment to have a requirement if they're going to participate in funding to meet the standard. And the interoperability is another whole mess that we need some requirement in interoperability in order to ensure the medium heavy duty space, which has already got its challenges, right? That there really is a communication with at least 2 OEMs or something to this effect. I don't know what the standard should be. And then a requirement for spare parts and diagnostic tools and a 24/7 service phone line. Just the things that we really need to make sure we got for medium heavy duty commercial that runs 24/7, 365. We need reliability at a commercial level.
So these are great. I'm going to listen to your recording later, Lisa, but I'm curious if maybe Jeffrey can respond to your question about the public process and about receiving input. We put some links into the chat that Jeffrey shared with us regarding this regulation and the proceedings and the procedures. Jeffrey, is what Lisa asking for, at least for visibility on this public process, is that all contained within those links that you shared that we shared in the chat?
A lot of it is. So we've had 2 public workshops because we have 2 drafts of the regulation, and there was a comment period for that. Those have since closed. Once this final proposal goes out, there will be a 45-day commenting period. And I think the best way to find out about that, barring like looking at our website every single day, I can drop a link later to our or listserv subscription. And if you check them on for reliability, like you'll get an email when that final proposal goes out and that 45-day comment period opens up.
Yep, drop that in the chat, Jeffrey, when we're done here. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I'm gonna move to the next commenter. I want to make sure that we're focusing on heavy duty fleets. So Bauskim, if you want to chime in here. All right. Well, maybe while he's figuring out how to unmute.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So before we discuss any reliability regulations with AB 2127 for the MHV charger market, shouldn't we first address the feasibility of implementing this entire charging system within the proposed timelines? I mean, for this to be a viable alternative to fossil fuel, diesel fuel, renewable diesel fuel, it would require 100 truck chargers to be put in the ground per day. So the version that we're talking about right now, how is this not being accounted for in the current planning? I mean, aren't we doing this before?
Hey, Bauskim, I would love it if you maybe listen to some of our earlier presentations on this. I know that you were here, but because our topic right now is just this reliability piece, but that bigger picture discussion about just long-term planning to build up infrastructure and how we are collaborating with the Public Utilities Commission, HISO, Energy Commission on those forward-looking projections of what electrification is going to look like over the long run, because building up the grid is definitely it starts upstream, but it's a very, very comprehensive challenge. And we have been focusing on previous meetings. So the discussion today is, so sorry to cut you off there, but I want to keep moving here. We're already 5 minutes past where I was hoping to stop, but I want to let Matt Zarega ask his question, and then we're going to move on to the next.
Yeah, this will be quick. So Jeffrey, I know you're talking about reliability primarily. Is there anything that these fleet folks ought to be thinking about in this domain with respect to connector standards, J1772, CCS1, MC, whatever the new, anyway, is there anything anyone ought to be thinking about that, or is that a separate discussion?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a separate discussion. I think most of we do have minimum connector requirements in our projects, and even for medium heavy duty, they have focused on J1772 and CCS1 to date. Those are like the predominant standards that we've seen used. The J3400 NACS connector, the specification for that, I think is going to be finalized sometime this month. And once that comes out, I think I'd encourage you to stay tuned. I think we're going to have some updated policies that might allow for funding for that to be used. Obviously, that's important for the passenger EV market. For medium heavy duty vehicles, I would also defer to the OEMs to see if they think it's in their interest to switch over to NACS from CCS1 for those vehicles. For megawatt charging system, kind of a similar boat to NACS in that the full specification is not yet done. And so it's not really possible for us to specify MCS today because there isn't a full specification. When we have greater confidence that there is a way to build MCS that's consistent across brands, then yeah, I think we would start allowing funding for that too. Obviously for MCS, given such high power levels, you may not need that for smaller trucks or even for certain trucks with different duty cycles. But yeah, hope that addresses your questions, and happy to clarify further if needed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see a question. I feel like didn't want to leave this one hanging, but there's a question hanging out in the Q&A box. Maybe Jeffrey, you can look at this. It's about the BEV manufacturers, charging station manufacturers, OCCP software developers. How do they overcome the challenge of
Yeah, I can. So it looks, so the way I'm interpreting this question is that power interruptions can be an issue because if there's a power outage like in the middle of the night, those charging sessions may not resume automatically. We do see yeah, we do understand how this is a very annoying problem. The joint office, so this is the Federal Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. They're actually working with the national labs on potential modifications to the communication standard between the EV and the EVSE, so the charger in the vehicle, to have automatic restart. And the idea here is the charging session would be able to resume regardless of whether it's due to a power interruption or just something else, like maybe communication dropped out for whatever reason. And so that is, I think that's a very good thing to point out, David, and it's something that's being worked on at the federal level.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. I'm going to ask Isaac to give it a shot again of doing a screen share. Make sure you highlight your full presentation once you've hit slideshow mode. Yeah, you got it. And now I'm introducing now Sanver Salati. He is Terawatt's Senior Policy Manager and leads advocacy work on charging infrastructure policy for the company. He has previously, he has a federal affairs consultant background. He specialized in EV charging, and he's based in Washington, D.C. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, good morning to everybody. Afternoon for me. Appreciate the inclusiveness of your East Coast colleague here. Thanks. Yeah, next slide, please, Isaac. We'll jump in here. And my presentation's pretty quick, so we'll try to make our time back up here. So Terawatt Infrastructure, we're a charging as a service provider. We work with heavy duty, light duty, and potentially medium duty fleets if they need DC fast charging. We only do DC fast. And our mission is to provide electric fleets with the most reliable network of charging solutions. Reliability, uptime, it is so core to our business. And so very excited to be here today and shed some light on what we're doing in that space. Next slide, please. So a little bit more information about Terawatt Infrastructure. We're based in California, got 15 sites under development, mostly in California, but also building out the I-10 corridor as our first priority corridor. We've raised $1 billion to deliver the first phase of this network. So pretty well capitalized, and we're rapidly scaling our investments to meet the demand of fleets and to help them comply with California's regulations. And as we all know, EV trucks, they emit significantly less greenhouse gas emissions than diesel. We're working with a lot of first movers, a lot of folks with ambitious ESG goals. Perhaps they want to tap into the TCO savings that come with electrification. And we predict with CARB that demand is going to scale up very significantly in the coming years. So we're hoping to be that trusted partner over the long term. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of where we're focusing. Given that California is the leader on fleet electrification, we really do see it as the starting point for national build out. We want to make sure that we're providing our customers with infrastructure wherever they might need it, both inside of the state and to take them out of the state. I'd say we're one of the only companies building that long haul EV charging infrastructure of today before it's really needed for on the fleet side. So very excited to be doing that. And I-10, it's our first priority corridor. We're building out from the Port of Long Beach all the way to El Paso, 7 charging stations, hoping to prove that out as one of the first fully electrified corridors for heavy duty travel in the United States. And we were fortunate to receive a pretty significant federal charging and fueling infrastructure grant to build out the New Mexico segment, which, as you know, based on demand, is highly challenging on the CapEx front, but we're building that there and working backwards to enable this sort of corridor travel. Next slide, please. So beyond the physical infrastructure that we offer, we provide our customers with a full stack charging solution. So that means we've got the infrastructure, we've got software, and then we've got the operational expertise to help folks really jump into what is a new novel charging and rather fueling solution for their fleets. We do publicly accessible shared access, shared depots, as well as behind the fence and built to suit charging as well. And then within the software space, we've developed our own proprietary charge management software, reservation software. And we could actually, it's cool, we could use this not just to do that sort of live monitoring of charging itself, but also to help folks plan out what an electrified fleet would look, how that would look for them. So very exciting stuff there too. Next slide, please. Reliability matters, as we've said. We've seen some comments here in the chat just about how unreliable some of the light duty stations can be. Definitely sympathize with that. I will say that the equation gets changed very significantly once you get into the commercial space. Reliability, uptime, a lack of it is an existential threat to charging as a service. Business models, we know that our fleet customers need the most reliable, high-powered charging available. And so our own uptime commitments are actually in excess of what we see as a baseline that would be set by this regulation. In the light duty space, it could be very, very frustrating for drivers to pull up to find perhaps there's a hardware issue with the charger itself. Maybe it's not, there's something wrong with the connector. There could be a software issue. Maybe the OCPP protocol is not firing as it should be. There's also vehicle challenges there as well. On the heavy duty side, we work with our customers from day one to demonstrate how our charging systems work. We'll walk them through the process. We really want to make sure that folks are, not getting vehicles or rather when they get the vehicle, they're going to be able to charge it with us as easy and most streamlined as possible. Next slide, please. So how do we do that, right? Mentioned earlier, we do have our own proprietary software systems that includes both charge management. So because all of our EV charging units are powered and networked, we do have that sort of centralized line of sight to be able to do remote monitoring. Our charge management system allows us to have that visibility. It allows fleets to schedule their charge. We can optimize the actual energy that's going into their vehicles to ensure that they're saving as much cost as possible on their charging. We allow reservations. We've got our own proprietary reservation system so that when they pull up to a terawatt charging center, they know that they have available capacity. They know that they're going to be getting in and out on the schedule that works for their duty cycle. We've got flexible billing. So we work with customers in a variety of different contracting, whether that's, whatever you want to use. It's a monthly fee. We can reserve stalls longer term for folks. And then we also have a really robust diagnostics and reporting system, which kind of feeds into that second point there on operations and maintenance. Because we're paying such close attention to the reliability and uptime of our charging stations, we have a 24/7 call center for folks to be able to check in with us, contact Terawatt if you're having a problem. That remote monitoring usually catches things before folks even pull up to a station, but should that occur, we want to make sure that we have an available forum for them to communicate with us. We also do, we're really good at preventative maintenance. We have sourced spare parts and other key pieces of our sites in advance of us needing them. So a lot of folks, they'll defer maintenance. Long term, they'll go to order a part and then they'll find that there's a multi-month lead time on actually sourcing that part. That then feeds back into their own site downtime because they're not going to be able to, we're not a manufacturer of chargers, right? And so we're not able to just go dip into our own supply chain and say, let's create more of this good. We have to rely on our EVSC partners for that. In order to get ahead of that, we do, again, purchase spare parts in advance. We store them for when we need them. And then we also get out in front of our maintenance. So we don't defer a lot of our work. We also have a hardware lab located in California where we can actually test EV charging units before they're rolled out into the field. We can work with customers to test charging sessions with their vehicles just to make sure that there's that seamless integration between the physical infrastructure, that software that kind of manages the charging system, but then also on the vehicle side as well. I know that there's a lot of concern about how the different types of vehicles will work with different types of chargers. We want to be that sort of aggregator in the middle, ensuring that we're ahead of that and ensuring that everything functions as it should be. Next slide, please. And while I have the floor, I'll just take a second to thank the CEC for supporting our most recently online project here. This is a light duty. I know it's the TRIG, but this is a light duty ride share charging site located very close to LAX, supported by a very generous CEC grant. So yes, this will be subject to those reporting requirements, but very excited for that and looking forward to working on this draft regulation to ensure that it works for both the charging folks, but then also for our fleet customers who may be installing some of their own infrastructure, perhaps behind the fence or at their own facility. And so the last thing that I'll leave you with, just a few recommendations here on that final regulation. We do hope that it's made as streamlined as possible to reduce as much administrative burden on the fleets themselves as we can. Terawatt, we have OCPP, we're tracking all of those metrics. We've received federal funding, so we're plugged into ChargeX and all of the other good work that's being done on standardization. But we really are the experts on that. We recognize that many of our customers prefer to contract with companies like Terawatt so that they don't have to be doing that stuff. And should they choose to install some of their own infrastructure, we really do hope that the regulation allows them to do so without having to pay so much attention to that data tracking as we do, especially if it's private, right? Sometimes private infrastructure, it may be brought offline for repair, that sort of thing. We don't want that sort of data to be feeding into the same sources that are tracking and measuring the state's progress on some of this public access and grant funded sites. So again, really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all here today. Looking forward to the discussion. My email, if anybody would like to follow up, it's easy. It's samv@terawattinfrastructure.com. You could throw that into the chat as well to make sure that you have it. But yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, Sam. Isaac, if you could stop screen share, folks queue up with the raised hand, but while I'm waiting, I have one for you, Sam. My brain started going into interoperability amongst the different charging providers. So we've got a number of you guys out there, Watt EV, Forum Mobility. I'm sure I'm missing others that are providing for heavy duty fleets a similar type of service where, roadside fast charging for medium and heavy duty vehicles. What's your thoughts on the ability for a single OEM truck to pull up at any one of those charging places to get a top off, just like they could pull up to any diesel fueling station? Do you feel like the systems are in place, especially with the standardization and where everything is going? In standardization that the system is going to be set up for that, like complete seamless interoperability?
Yeah, no, really appreciate that. I do think it may be challenging between the different, network operators to have that sort of communication between the different networks that are being stood up. I would say that, for any, independent owner operator, small fleets, just ensure that you're in our reservation system, that you've reached out to Terawatt. That way you can ensure that charging infrastructure will be available for you in advance when you pull up. So that would be the best practice in that regard, especially because, as you know, the time to charge for heavy duty vehicles especially it's more significant than the light duty. So what we don't want is to have a queue at the sites of folks just waiting to charge.
Okay, got it. All right, we're going to open for questions. Also remind everybody in the audience, please type your question in the chat. I think we've already got one, but I'm going to go to David Rothbart now.
Hi, David Rothbart representing Clean Water SoCal, and we represent the wastewater sector in California. Thanks, Sam, for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I guess two questions. One would be, as far as reliability and kind of what would be done to make sure the system's reliable. Like, as a private firm, it's a lot of time and effort and money to maintain things. What would you be doing differently than some of the examples people have provided saying things are not reliable? What's going to be different moving forward to provide that reliability first?
Yeah, really good question, David. I really think that it comes down to the business model, right? For us, we need a high uptime because our customers, the fleets themselves, need a high uptime. They're already working really, really hard to decarbonize their operations. And so we want to take that concern about uptime and reliability off their hands by doing a really good job ourselves. There's a lot of charging as a service providers, a lot of companies that are being stood up to meet the demand for fleet charging. And so, if somebody's not up to par, there's other options in terms of infrastructure for them to seek out. And so we want to make sure that our infrastructure is as reliable as possible so that they're confident that they could not just charge with us now, but as they grow and scale their fleet, their electrified segment of their fleet, that they could do so long into the future as well.
And you teed up kind of my second question would be just the infrastructure needed for the heavy duty sector. I assume what you're planning is not going to take care of all the heavy duty trucks. There needs to be a lot of infrastructure for what you're proposing to build out. How many trucks would it support?
So we'd love to be able to support all the trucks. I think the good news is, again, as I flagged, there's a lot of folks in the space who are really rapidly building out that infrastructure. I think that, all of the assessments that are being done in terms of infrastructure availability, how fast it's scaling, they're really starting to show evidence of that work. And so, we're very confident that our network could serve a lot of the demand, but we are hopeful and we are seeing a lot of other movement from other folks in the space to start to build out that infrastructure as well. And funding too, which, we can definitely appreciate.
Appreciate it. And for CARB, it's just more of an issue of the infrastructure needs to be there and the electrons need to be there to actually make this work on a large scale. And that's kind of where I'm coming from, is make sure that there is the infrastructure that'll be reliable that we need. So thank you.
Nothing will happen overnight. Thank you, David. Lisa?
Hi, yeah, David. Or not David, Sam, thank you. I want to make sure that we are thinking about managing the experience, right? Because for the medium heavy duty, you already kind of cited that it is all about high uptime. It's always about an experience that's about good service, right? Because these trucks need to be reliably on the road. And that's really it. So I have questions for you as it relates to what are you guys doing about interoperability? Standard for the equipment that you're choosing, and are you choosing different equipment? And how are you planning to specifically manage the best practices for timeline for medium heavy duty, when theoretically peak time is the only time that's really going to create a true cost outside of your own voltage costs, right? But are you going to just manage a peak time, and what are you doing with the kilowatt hour? Are you tiering your cost, or I'm curious to know what your model is looking like for the end user in terms of cost and access, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of cost, we really do encourage folks to reach out. You can reach out to me or to our business development team. We'd be happy to walk through sort of how contracts are structured, what our pricing looks like, that sort of thing. In terms of guaranteeing the experience, we have our own maintenance technicians in-house at Terawatt. And so when there's a problem at the site, we hope to identify it in advance, but should we not be able to, should the remote monitoring system start setting off alarm bells, we do have folks that can go out. They can check on the infrastructure themselves. They can initiate repairs on their own. And then when it comes to working with our customers, right, we do really want to make sure that it's a great experience for them as well. So before they start coming to our sites on an operational basis, we're always happy to have them over, show them how the actual charging session could work, how to operate our chargers as well. And then to your first question, in terms of the actual interoperability standards that we're using, OCPP, 2.0.1, it's kind of the gold standard in terms of that sort of networked charger interoperability at the moment. But we're also using, the latest and greatest in OCPI. Once plug and charge, ISO 15118, I believe it is sort of the industry standard. That will be another key part of the experience as well at a lot of these sites.
What I meant by interoperability, I thought probably wasn't clear. But what are you doing to make sure that your site supports the different OEM trucks on the interoperability?
Well, I see Arvind has his hand raised as well, but we are, very closely partnered with the OEMs on this. we work with customers who have many different types of trucks from different OEMs. So again, it comes down to that sort of individualized approach to how we work with our customers, ensuring that, should they need it, they can come to our site, they can see how the charger can actually work in practice, and we can make sure that the charger will work with their vehicles before they start to pull up.
All right, can we move over to Arvin?
Right here, you.
Go ahead. You had your hands raised, you had a question?
You're off mute, but we're not hearing you, Arvind.
Say something. No, shoot. Okay, let me go to Mark Perry next, and while Ervin figures this out.
Hi, Sam. We've heard from several different places and people about the high cost of networking the chargers. And would you say that having network chargers improves your business model, or would you say that the cost of the networking imposes a risk to your business?
For us, because we're a charging as a service provider, our chargers will, of course, be networked. That remote monitoring capability is really, really key for us, but absolutely recognize that for some folks, especially who are installing chargers perhaps at their own depot, these are private only, and they're not covering a wide service territory. They may not need network chargers for that work. So for us, network chargers is key, but in a lot of use cases, they could go for non-network chargers there.
Thank you.
Arvin, are you ready? Okay, I am so sorry. We are not hearing you. Matt?
Yeah, so hopefully this is a quick one. Matt, Terravarty Energy. Interoperability. So going back to my earlier question, J1772, CCS1, NACS J3400, and then MCS. What are your plans as far as these corridors that you're developing? What is the connector standard that's going to be deployed there? Is it NACS or is it CCS1 or something else?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. So in the heavy duty space, and for context, I mean, terawatt, we're only doing that high powered charging. So it's predominantly going to be either CCS1, or once the megawatt charging standard is an actual standard and ubiquitous, it would be MCS. But would kick it over to the OEMs in terms of the work that's being done on connectors and ensuring that vehicles are able to charge at the many different types of charging stations that are being stood up. For us, though, it's predominantly CCS1 and then in the future MCS.
Thank you.
Now I'm concerned if Ervin, try one more time.
Am I coming through now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so sorry about this, fiddling around with the my studio display. Anyway, sorry about that. Sam, thanks for a good presentation. And just to complete this train of discussion from an OEM perspective, one of the things that we're investing resources is to work with the different charging providers, the different connector makers, and just make sure that our onboard charging system is able to charge and check all the safety boxes and things of that sort. So that is definitely something that we're doing from our side, in addition to what folks like yourselves, Sam, are doing on the infrastructure side. My question to you, however, sticking to the reliability theme, is you talked a lot about how you're ensuring reliability standards for chargers, but recognizing that from a trucking business perspective, uptime is everything. And I think you mentioned that several times yourself. How do you make sure that your site has all the power that it needs when the trucks get there? So in other words, beyond charger reliability, in terms of your site resiliency, what are some of the things that you're doing? That's part one. And part two is what do you think it would take to replicate this elsewhere? Because you talked about one of the sites. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in terms of the actual, I think it's a really good point, because we're thinking about this both on the charger and at the site level, right? You can have great uptime for a single charger, but we want to make sure that our capacity is available and that it's being utilized as fully as possible and as efficiently as possible. So building in redundancies where we need it, in parts of California where there are grid constraints, or if we're, looking at that utility timeline and it's a little bit challenging, we're using, mobile power solutions. We'll use batteries where needed so that we can have that sort of reserve power in the event of, really high demand charges or some sort of issue with the grid itself. So certainly considering that as well. In terms of replicability in multiple places, that's just something that, we're going to iterate on and sort of learn as we go. Obviously, it's a pretty nascent industry. And so these sites are being stood up now. Of course, folks, are very entitled to have some reservations just about, how this will all work in practice. But for us, we're deploying that sort of phase one of the sites in the coming years as that, availability of power scales up on the utility side. We'll start to rapidly scale what sort of energy we use at our sites as well. And again, very appreciative of the work that your company has been doing on the energization and sort of utility regulatory front. That's an issue that we're also heavily engaged in, and something that I think we'll all as a group have to chip away at a bit before we can really scale and move quickly here.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, thank you so much, Sam. Great presentation, fantastic questions coming in. We are going to move on to our last presentation. So Isaac, if you could bring up the slide deck again. Terawatt infrastructure. I'm going to introduce Matt. Matt Zarega from Terra Verde Energy has been the director of fleet consulting for Terra Verde for the last year and a half. He's been working exclusively in the EV and EV infrastructure domain since 2010, starting with Sempra Energy, then SDG&E, and he has consulted for several years, and including for Shell in their recharge program. So I'm going to pass the mic on over to my friend Matt and let you take it away.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide a little bit of a different view on this medium and heavy duty charging space. Terra Verde Energy works with a lot of state and local government fleets, mostly water agencies, schools. We have a couple of commercial fleets that we've worked with, but we're helping them to develop, looking at advanced clean fleet regulation, basically working analytically, technical math, financial math to come up with a 10-year plan. Like what are we going to do here? Rough order of magnitude. And so that through that experience with several different fleets, I'm bringing this view here. I'm going to share with you today about some alternative ways to look at how you can provide charging to your medium and heavy duty fleet reliably and at lowest possible cost. So let's move to the next slide, please. So this simple slide here, this is an aerial view of a kind of a recurring pattern I'm seeing with these SLG fleets, state and local government fleets. Here we see a parking lot where there's a fleet parking area and there's an employee parking area. And physically speaking, they are, if you have a vehicle in there, whether it's medium heavy duty or your own personal light duty car, these vehicles can move freely through the area. And what I'm seeing from these fleets is that whether they get equipment that is subsidized or not, they want this equipment installed in the lots to be accessible or usable by employees. So obviously for employees for, like, let's say a water agency, we don't want to be giving away electrons for free. And so the desire for a lot of these fleet operators is to allow the employees to pay for that use, whereas the fleet vehicles ought to be able to just plug in and recharge. And obviously fleet operators also need to know what is the consumption across the fleet. And so we need to be able to distinguish employee charging consumption versus fleet consumption. And generally in these contexts also, these are not for public use. But the summary takeaway here is that there are ways to accommodate these kinds of requirements that I just described very simply and without networking, without the access and fees and perpetuity to a network services firm. We have the utility meter, which we have pictured there, and then What you don't see in this little graphic down on the lower right is a dotted line that goes from the charging unit to the World Wide Web. Data can be passed between the charging unit and the phone, for example, in order to facilitate things like employee payments and the exchange of data. So we won't dig down into those details at the moment. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is going to be short and sweet, but this collection of graphics here represents some other things that have come up in discussions with mostly water agency fleets. These organizations naturally employ people like instrumentation techs, technical people, and so these kinds of suggestions here are attractive to some. And let me just quickly explain a few. So on the right, you see it's a circuit timer. This is an off-the-shelf kind of thing you can get from any electrical supply store. So if the requirement for the fleet is, for a medium and heavy duty fleet, is, hey, we want to be sensitive to demand response events that our utilities tell us about, and we usually get day-ahead warnings. Well, it may not be technically terribly interesting, but an intermatic timer like that can be used. You can set it to simply shut the charging off during, peak times or during that demand response event to the next day, and it will be handled. No internet connection. Problem reporting. If the fleet operator, the management group wants to know, hey, we need to know when a charging unit out in the parking lot, if we have 10 charging units, we need to know if one's broken and not working. We don't necessarily need a live internet connection to that charging unit via OCPP and all that. We can simply have employees report that the charging unit is not working. There are ways to do it with phone apps that are very simple. I'm sure some of us have come across those kinds of implementations already in the public charging space, but you can do it with the phone. Fleet usage can be, for looking at total usage reports, again, you could just use the utility meter for that. For something like access control, just plain old access control, there are very simple wireless switches that can be used. That's reflected in that lower graphic there on the lower left, where you have a Z-Wave fob or there are other methods. But again, the standard off-the-shelf components, $50, $100, you hook it up to the circuit, you're done. And then payments, you can facilitate payment without an internet connection by simply passing tokens between, and these are tokens that have normally been used on the internet to facilitate access control, authentication. So not Bitcoin, nothing like that. It's just simply a way to get permission to use the charging and to pay for it by basically on the phone buying a token off a server, passing it to the charging unit. The charging unit turns on for some specified number of minutes or for a number of kilowatt hours. And again, that's a way to facilitate the employee payment. So I think the summary comment here, and I don't think there is any more slides here. If we just go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, yeah. So this is just a little bit more of a detailed view on kind of how this non-network, no network connection between the charging unit and the internet can work, how these kinds of needs can be met without the internet. And that's just what's reflected here in the graphic. Is essentially what we're doing is we're relying on a connection between a phone and the charging unit, and then thereby removing that monthly fee and that complexity. And I guess this one of the other accompanying points here is that complexity of the internet connection between the charging unit and to the charging unit is often the source of reliability questions or concerns. And as has already been stated by other presenters, we need to look for all opportunities to eliminate risks to that reliability experience for medium and heavy duty for obvious reasons. And that little table there in the lower right is just simply a list of basically antique technology, proven again over the years that we implement to get these low cost, reliable methods. I think we're done here. Is there another slide here? No. So I guess with that, I'll wrap it up and open to questions.
Thank you so much, Matt, for giving us an alternative. So yeah, stopping screen share, same as before. We're going to use raised hand feature for the folks, for our panelists, and for folks in the audience. Use the Q&A feature to post your questions. I'm looking at that now. Yes, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for that presentation. I'm wondering, so we're aware of a couple companies that do that sort of tokenization payment method that uses the phone as the internet connection. Are you aware of any companies that like offer that as an off-the-shelf component that you as an integrator could go and purchase? Or do you usually have to go through one of these more end-to-end service companies that do it for you? Oh, you're on mute, Matt.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything off the shelf. I am just aware of the relative technical simplicity to implement something like that, you know, if you're a coder, if you know how to write firmware, that sort of thing. So it's a simple concept technically, and I am aware of patents that exist around that in the EV charging space. Really, it's a matter of we all need to wait. If we want to implement that, the payment method tokenized, we need to wait for somebody to implement it. That's the unfortunate part.
Got it. Thank you.
Again, evidence of the nascency in this space.
Does anybody else have a question for, yeah, Lisa, I see Eric.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Leslie. Just a quick question as it relates to that presentation and then Jeffrey's presentation up front. I'm wondering where the Energy Commission kind of ultimately landed on driver self-reporting of issues and how that relates into the reliability standard. Matt has kind of touched on the ability to kind of get data through indeed crowdsourcing. And especially in the context of, you know, non-network chargers in the public sphere where there might be an inherent perverse incentive to not report when your chargers aren't working. Kind of where the commission and landed on a mechanism for drivers to self-report issues to the commission to inform their data reporting on when chargers are working and when they're not, and indeed to kind of have more of an apples to apples comparison between the different sorts of technologies. Perhaps that's more to Jeffrey than anyone else.
Well, let me chime in just for a second.
Yeah.
I believe the case study that Matt is really talking about here is more like, you know, a small state and local government or a state and local government fleet that also wants to offer charging to their employees. So it isn't, he's not operating a vast network. You know, it's more, right, Matt? I mean, this is so that, you know, kind
I'm
of
just asking about the
someone
technology's
proposes-
ability, like the ability of the technology to use case aside. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
Yes, use case aside, I would assert that if we have charging deployed somewhere, incentives supported it, whether that's public or fleet only, fleet and employee, and the entity providing the incentives wants to know if there's a reliability problem. Simply, all I'm suggesting is that one way we can do that while keeping the cost low, minimizing the threat to reliability by eliminating the internet connection to the charging unit, is that crowdsourcing and reporting through an app could work. That's all I was trying to convey there. Again,
Yeah,
I think it goes back to Eric's question about what do the regulators and policymakers think about that? Is that kind of your question, Eric?
That is the question, right? So given, you know, the ability to do that, what the Energy Commission is thinking about mechanisms through varieties of, you know, technologies, apps or otherwise for drivers to be able to report when things aren't working. So you have multiple sources of truth.
So would
not just-
anybody from online from the Energy Commission, whether it's Jeffrey or anybody else, prepared to respond to that? Because I think it's a really good question.
It is a really good question. I don't actually know off the top of my head, and I'm going to check with our our staff that leads this. And if he responds within, the next 20 minutes, I'll post it in the chat, but otherwise I'll follow up with you separately.
Circle back with me. I'll try to get it in the meeting notes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah. Thanks. Lisa?
Yeah, hi, Matt. This was I think long overdue, but nothing I think that you're implying here that can very well be done. I know that in the utility proceedings, they have been pursuing smart metering in a pilot project, right? So similar circumstances when it comes to what truly is available, but we've gone down this path that really does concern me, which I think this equipment kind of solves this other choice that really could bring a different affordability level that is non-networked and certainly should be explored. Because when we talk about the network, we're talking about other communication devices that could literally turn you on or off because of that communication, whereas the hardware itself works just fine. It's like turning a light switch up. If the light bulb's in it, it works. But when you got this communication device, it adds all these layers of complexity. And so I want to advocate that when we think about it charging, we've got AC charging and dumb chargers that we all well know. They work like our refrigerator. They never break. They're usually always available, right?
Right.
I know on the network side, we've got lots of issues. And it's really just because of the network or the repair service that's lacking. And so I think we need to make sure that we've got choices. We've got reliability that could be done in different pathways, affordability. Again, the utilities are already deploying pilot projects with smart metering. And there are ways to gather the data from a smart meter or the devices that Matt shared. And I think this is long overdue. The utilities are well aware of it. And my biggest concern is that we're looking at networking costs per charger when you own it of $900 a month, maybe $600 on a DC charger. No,
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy, and it needs.
Yeah, may I respond?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big number. I haven't come across that one, and I've been in this space since 2010. Okay, maybe I'll come down and see you. I'll check out the invoices. But in any case, what I agree with you. I think the points you're making here are very important, and that's kind of what I'm trying to convey is, hey, look, we don't all need to, especially in the medium and heavy duty space. We don't all need to jump to networked charging. Just assume that that's what we do.
Agreed.
There are other methods we can pursue to meet our requirements as medium and heavy duty fleet operators that are cheap and off the shelf. They're not technically interesting. They're not attached to, some new VC funded stock trading symbol, but they work, right? And if you have the technical people available that know about these devices, you ought to think about just going ahead and putting them in. Save yourself a bunch of headache, a monthly fee, enjoy reliable charging with your fleet. And there are ways to do this. And that's really the whole point.
I think now is a really good time because I know you two could pretty much dominate the next 40 minutes, but I'm not going to let you. Because I think our segue is a good one. And I was going to offer a break, but before we do, because we are going to run out of time, I'm going to ask Isaac to pull up slide number 29. And this is going to be an audience participation exercise, and it's very much in line with the discussion we are having, in that we have two things that are at play. We have what is the system as a whole want? What are we trying to achieve with these regulations and networking requirements versus what are the priorities and expectations of either the truck driver or the fleet? So I broke it into two categories, and I'm going to ask people to either raise their hand, say something, or type, we can have maybe our panelists type in your top 1 or 2 or 3 priorities into the chat, but separate them between what is your priorities and expectations when it comes to a public charger, one that we've been talking about that, terawatt, watt EV, forum mobility, etc., offer to their fleet customers versus a private charger and their priorities and expectations. And that's sort of more the model of your home-based depot chargers, those that, you know, that you might also offer employee charging as well, but it's more of a closed system. What are your priorities and expectations? And the people I really want to hear from here are the fleets, because these are our ultimate customers here at CAR. Our customers are the ones that we are requiring to adopt zero emission vehicles. And I think it's going to be super important to know what they have to say. And I mean, ultimately, I do have a kind of a goal here, is that if there's anything that we bring from this meeting overall is there a way we can maybe inform any, whether it's policy changes or funding program changes, to make sure we really have the requirements and the priorities and the expectations of the fleet and the driver in mind. And so I feel like what we're going to be doing is we're going to be monitoring the Q&A and the chat for suggestions that are coming in. But as you give your suggestions, definitely I want you to separate between these two categories: public chargers, open to all, whether it's by appointment or whatever, versus private chargers, pretty much for the fleet and their employees. So this is a good time to just start chiming in, take a potty break, and we're gonna kind of come back, and I'm gonna have Isaac, we're gonna work with Isaac to start populating this slide. And so I won't be hogging up too much conversation on this, but this is everybody's homework assignment. And I'm gonna shut up and turn off my camera and come back in about, let's revisit at 11:30. And but feel free to chime in during this time. Thanks.
So feel free to chime in. I'm going to chime in. I will just assert, is it okay for me to make a suggestion here on the
Yeah,
right?
we'll start writing it down. I mean, I'll take notes.
Okay. I'm not a fleet operator, but I work with several. But I will say the thing that keeps coming up, even in the context of private charging, is that oftentimes, again, because these parking lots are physically shared, is oftentimes the fleet operator says, well, hey, if we're going to be putting in 10 or 20 charging units, I really don't want to tell my employees who have EVs, hey, you can't use this stuff. So the priority oftentimes is, yes, this is fleet charging equipment, but it needs to be accessible for pay for use to employees.
Access to employees.
Pay for use, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since no one else is chiming in, I'm just going to say that for either of these two domains, number one, whether it's medium and heavy duty fleets, private or public, number one priority.
Matt, I stepped away for a second. Could you start over?
Just that in either of these domains, number one priority, and I would invite anyone to disagree with this, that number one priority is what we talked about earlier, which is reliability. It has to work every time. I know through my entire life, there's never been an occasion when I went to put gasoline in my car and I couldn't. So reliability is number one.
Got it. Now we'll look at the chat here. I'm not seeing stuff come in from the Q&A.
I'd like to offer one more, if I may.
Sure.
So the other expectation that I hear over and over again is that all in hardware installation, net of incentives, ongoing network fee, or not, that the all-in cost for charging vehicles ought to be at parity or near parity with liquid fuels. That's an expectation I keep hearing over and over again.
All right. Are you across the board, public and private?
Well, what I'm conveying right now is just what I hear mostly from
Okay.
even SLG fleets.
Yeah. All right. We got a behind the scenes chat going on for
Leslie, this is Damon. I put some items in the chat to everybody on the webinar also relative to private charger priorities for municipally owned fleets.
And just to chime in on the public charger priorities, I imagine all the fleets are taking the break until 2:30, but for the public charger, it's access and availability, ensuring that you have, infrastructure that's available and you can access reliably is just as important as the physical uptime of the site itself.
okay. I know my brain's I've got a lot of different things coming on. Sam, you said, what did you say?
Ability to access
Okay.
and reliable access. So when you pull up, there's a stall for you there.
And Leslie, one thing that might go in the left column, but not the right one for public in front of the fence, and you kind of touched on it with your question earlier, Leslie, is does network roaming and interoperability. We heard from the presentations today that use cases are a little bit different, so it might not be as much of an instant focus on that, but it'd be a shame if the MHD charging space gets built out in a way where they kind of get lost of that consideration,
So,
right? And we have to like learn the same
right.
same lesson over again that we did with the light duty space, where that continues to be an issue, and perhaps there's providers and or regulators should be kind of thinking a little bit more on the onset how to get in front of those issues.
So in a few words, you're saying for public, we need network access. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a Luddite here.
Network roaming is probably the term you want to use.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Damon, you mentioned you have municipal comments in there. That's for private charging, right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So like for us, being in a rural county with 6 different water systems and 13 different wastewater systems, one of the challenges for us is how to deploy charging stations because our vehicles have a pretty long or wide duty cycle. And I don't know if that's going to be applicable, across the board for the state, but I think for the rural folks that, or the larger utilities, or they'll get that.
So, okay, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to suggest we put that into words.
Right.
The priorities are having sufficient charging capabilities in remote locations.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep.
And Leslie, one thought for when this kind of ultimately gets put together is perhaps there's like a third column for just common priorities, right? And then columns that kind of clearly differentiate the differences between the two. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Venn diagram. Yeah, like that.
Hey, Leslie, I think this might work under public charger, and that's multiple vehicle OEM interoperability.
Yeah, that's public for sure. That's a good one, Mark. Oh my gosh, it's already, well, if people have returned, I hope. I see something from an OEM. Alex Cervenka, fleet perspective for public chargers have an app-based reservation system that can be accessed via the truck's infotainment system. I like that, or a navigation device. And Alec, oh God, I maybe should type in, I'm trying to remember which OEM you're from. Kenworth, good one. Yeah, so what's coming up a lot is that cost parity. I think that's going to be common with both. Reliability is common with both.
I'm going to add, Leslie, we need a minimum cable length of 18 feet.
Oh,
in both scenarios. And we do need 24/7 support.
that's public, right?
Public, that'd be public for Taya. So, but both should have minimum cable length of 18. Public side 24/7 support. I do agree that there should be an app for filtering on voltage, or the power rating, however you want to look at it, as well as the ability to support a certain type of GVWR on the ingress egress. Those are big issues when it comes to medium heavy duty space and design.
So, but on the
Public side, well, both sides really. I mean,
yeah, I mean, in that place, that's really, it's not necessarily a charger. It's not
no, but it is
necessarily,
reliability because you can't pull into something that you can't fit in. You know?
yeah. So
I don't know.
I guess I was
Maybe
going to
not.
make a grand
Yeah.
assumption when we're talking about public charging the likes of which what Sam is talking about, their systems are designed for Class 8 trucks. So when it comes to access to that and pulling up to a stall, right, Sam? I mean, your property can withstand a big heavy.
That's completely correct, Leslie. But I also want to say, Lisa, I totally agree, and I also think, you know, so many folks just say, why don't you just retrofit a diesel, you know, truck stop, or why don't you just add heavy duty charging to a light duty site and that'll be enough? No, these sites, you know, usually have to be purpose built for heavy duty, especially on the ingress and egress. So definitely appreciate that point as well.
Well, then, okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah, it's something that you have to pay attention to when you're traveling from point A to point B. If you're going to go through the tank and know that you need to stop, you need to know that you can have access. For example, you can't fit in a garage, and you can't fit in all parking spaces. So it's just a point that's an issue that needs a standard. I'd like to make sure that we've got some type of interoperability standard as it relates to public chargers that are being installed by either multiple OEMs or whoever's in charge of that project, that there's some required between the interoperability testing or certification that's going to happen between the charger OEM and vehicle OEM, whether it's a minimum number of OEMs that sign off on it or just something. But you put something in the ground and you go plug into it and you can't even use it because of a communication issue. That's a firmware, and if the two aren't talking to each other, then they have to agree to talk to each other to fix the problem together.
Yeah, and that's captured in the multiple vehicle OEM interoperability. Like we do find ourselves talking about that later. We could go into more detail. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Aravind?
Thanks, Leslie. I think these are all good points and I agree with them. On the public charger side, I would say that, you know, accounting for the truck driver, right? I mean, I'm thinking about a truck stop where if someone were to pull in, they'd probably have access to some amenities. Maybe they'd want to go use the restroom. Maybe they want to go, you know, sit down somewhere, maybe eat something, because again, this is a, 60 to, 30 to 60 minutes where the truck driver is probably going to be on the clock, but not going to be inside the truck and, would be doing things that normally they would be doing when they are at a truck stop today. So I think planning for, I don't know what's the right words. I wanted to flush this out before I came off mute, but just keeping the truck driver in mind and making sure that he or she has the necessary amenities.
Essential services, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking standard amenities for drivers.
Yeah, or
Essential. I think more like essential, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, essential. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, okay.
I want to say that we should have a choice on the private side. We should have a choice for non-network standard. That increases.
They do have a choice for non-network standards.
No, we don't. Not when you're in a program.
Exactly.
The utilities require everything to be networked.
So the response is typically, you can install whatever charging you want
without funding.
But if you want to take advantage of a program, you have to abide by these. And one of the things what we're trying to do here is, like, on this public charger aspect of it, are there ways that we can affect change to those funding programs? And I think the reason why I really wanted to bring this up, or I don't actually know how to say it, because I don't like stepping on the toes of our agency partners, but at the same time, if we're hearing that our public fleets, especially those that are, providing services, they are not necessarily, we have public fleets that are not, they're not a commercial fleet. They're a fleet that provides services either to their utility or to their school district, or maybe to a transit agency. They're providing a service. They're not collecting revenue for anything, or except for maybe fares, but regardless, that those are the ones we really want to be able to support with our funding programs. And when we close the door to, say, a school district to have access to energize funding or utility funding programs or something like that, because the cost to network is it makes it cost prohibitive for them. They can't fit in the monthly fees in their budget. We just wanted to bring that up of like, how can we maybe find a way to accommodate those fleets?
It does exist already in the utility. There is a CPC proceeding that allows the facility meter to be used as long as you've got a smart meter installed, but it's only specific to 20 kilowatts and less. So we've already crossed that bridge in the proceedings based on the same subject matter because of the unaffordability with small fleets and the cost effectiveness associated with installing all this extra separate metered equipment when you already have a meter on site. So it's just something that we could now start thinking about how we can do better by improving, by still allowing you to get data, but improving the process to make it more affordable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of been kind of my intent here of the meeting. We are getting into our last 15 minutes here.
Leslie, just quick observation. I mean,
Yeah.
beyond just kind of the physical access pull through considerations, these lists strike me as being very similar to what the same list would be for light duty. So maybe just kind of a challenge to the group is what might go into each column that would be different than light duty, or if indeed priorities and needs are pretty well aligned. That kind of points to being able to learn from the much longer experience of the light duty sector in addressing these challenges.
Yeah, I'll echo that, Eric, based on what I see through the years, the last decade plus in working with fleets lately, is that it's very hard in practical reality to think of these domains as separate. Fleet, employee, public, it all kind of blends together in many use cases.
I want to also just add one more to make sure that we're not derating on the power, that the customers have full availability of the power that the equipment's rated to do. So they're not pulling up there and it's derated.
And is that public and private or just public?
Are we going to consider private to be like the Sam's is it Terra?
No, actually, I think you're talking public. Sam's public.
Public.
We do both though. So we appreciate the input.
But you know me, I am trying to compartmentalize really desperately here, and I realize
I hear you.
I would say yes without the customer's permission.
Full availability of the power they need.
The power, the rating of if the equipment's rated for 200, they should be able to pull up and get 200 and expect 200. They shouldn't get derated unless they get permission for derating. Because that's all a matter of time and experience, right? You go down to half of that, it's going to take you twice as long to get what you thought you were going to get.
Well, Lisa, you know that the vehicle has something to say about that too, right?
Well, yeah, only at 80%, right? So I'm just trying to make sure that we're covering our bases for experience.
What Lisa's saying also came into as a chat from somebody else, right? This is a concern. Like if you say, that these chargers are capable of doing 250 kilowatts for your Class 8 truck, but it's a dual part charger and it's getting split between 2 trucks. Now you're only getting half. That wasn't part of your plan, right? You planned on pulling in and getting the 250, not
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's about reliability and time, right? Because you're making a plan to get from point A to point B, and you're going to stop for 1 hour. But if you can't get what you thought you were going to get, then there goes your plan.
Okay. I have a feeling what I'm going to be doing with this table is before we post it online, we're going to be working to take in a ton of the input and comments that everybody's provided, whether we do 3 columns or whatever. But I really appreciate the input that everybody's given on this table. We're kind of sort of running out of time, and I really did want to. I feel like we grabbed everybody's input. Oh, somebody's got a lot of. Somebody chimed in with a whole bunch in the Q&A, which I think they're echoing a lot of the comments that other people have given. But I do appreciate hearing from our audience. For private, they want reliability, affordability, minimizing downtime or days reduced to power availability due to grid overloads, cost parity. And then for public, they want availability, reliability, interoperability, affordability, and network accessibility to more remote locations. So we're going to take all of this in and construct maybe 1 or 2 slides that are a little bit comprehensive of all the input we've received on this meeting. So I very much appreciate everybody's participation. I think what we're going to do now is kind of go to the next slide and do a recap. I think for our recap, I'm just going to ask our chairs. We have Annalise Bevin, Mark Perry, Adam Browning. If you guys want to just reflect on anything that stood out for you today, what do you think was most valuable, that kind of thing. I'll just let one or all of you just pop on the screen and just share your thoughts about today's meeting.
I'll pop in. I have really appreciated the constructive conversation here. We're hearing things that we've heard before, but I think there's been a bit more specificity, which is much appreciated. It sounds like there's a lot to be talked about in terms of ensuring reliability and what components are sort of the pinch points there. Some good suggestions being made. So very much appreciate CEC and Jeffrey's presentation and a willingness to hear from the stakeholder group in this forum about their programs. And I hope that this has been a constructive input to CEC's process. Mark, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, you covered it fairly succinctly right there and accurately. The only thing I have to say is that I know that a lot of people want, or I don't know if a lot of people want. It's just that we've heard about network chargers and just all the chargers that are going to be funded by the CEC. They're going to continue to be networked. So we have to work on. I mean, and the reason for that is of course, is we have data collection and we have uptime requirements, and it's just easier to do that on a networked. And especially when you're getting into 10, 20 chargers and more than it possibly is with people doing the their own self-reporting. But yeah, it's definitely we could think of ways to bring those costs down as something that we might need to look into. And I don't know how to do, because that's, we don't do the networking. We just require it. So there's room for change in there.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, can we bring the slide back up? I want to just let everybody know what our plans are for the next meeting. We're proposing to finally circle back on hydrogen infrastructure. Maybe some of you have heard that California has actually recently gotten a contract signing with the Department of Energy for the first tranche of funding from DOE for our hydrogen hubs successful application through ARCHES. That's a public-private partnership. ARCHES stands for Alliance for Renewable Clean Hydrogen Energy Systems. So we'll be giving an update on that. We'll be giving an update on LCFS amendments and the implications of that, and then other factors that can affect future cost and price of hydrogen, which tends to be the hot topic and every time we bring up the discussion of hydrogen. That meeting is going to be on November 4th 2024 this year, in the afternoon, 1 to 3. So be prepared. I'm working on, I'll start working on that one next week. I'll be sending out a calendar hold. Also for future meetings, we're starting to, first we want to know with all of our panelists, whether you're here or not today, let me know if you are still interested in being on this panel. Because I just want to make sure that since we do have folks that have been on our wait list that want to join, again, we've always wanted to have a very diverse panel. I think we have that right now, but we want to know if there's anybody else, if there's somebody that it no longer fits for you, and what your duties are, what your job descriptions are. This hasn't really been the panel for you. I want to know that. Just shoot an email directly to me. And then we also want to figure out, like, what are people interested in for future topics to cover at our next meetings. That's something that we've asked for input for before our last meeting, number 3. That prompted the discussion for this meeting, number 4. And then just curious if people want to shoot me an email on what they would like future topics to be. Our very first TRIG meeting, we got a couple minutes here. Maybe you could go to the next slide, Isaac. In our very first meeting, we did this exercise where we asked everybody what their main concerns were, and we tried to get a feel for what topics could be. This has been posted in previous TRIG presentations. This is by no means inclusive, and as we have been continuing these meetings, we're sort of learning, that the topic of discussion tends to evolve as we move forward. So it doesn't have to be any one of these, but that said, I do want your input. I want input on future meetings. And finally, we're thinking about just setting up a regular cadence for these meetings rather than me sending out those Google polls every month, just picking a day in the month every quarter for 2025, starting, say, in February 2025. And that is, so that's part of our plan. And I'll probably be shooting emails out to folks to say which one, every first whatever of whatever months work best for you, just to see. And that'll also be in the an email about your interest in continuing on this, as well as topics. So look for an email from me with probably in the next week to just kind of fish for your future interest in all the things I just talked about. So I'm gonna pass the mic on over to Annalisa. Maybe she can give us some closing remarks.
Leslie kind of covered the sort of where we go from here, and very much appreciate everybody's participation. I'm seeing in the chat some from Lisa in particular the interest in the hydrogen topic, and I think we have good content for that lined up, but I don't want it to be a one-way conversation. This isn't intended to be a seminar. It's more of a conversation. So I would suggest too thinking about what do folks want to talk about? What are your questions? What are the kinds of things around the hydrogen topic that you'd like to get into a conversation about? And maybe from the email that Leslie sends out in your response back about dates and continued interest, you can maybe suggest some questions to pose to the panel and to the audience at large that will spur some conversation. And very much interested in where you want to take this panel and this TRIG into 2025. What are those questions that that we need to tackle as a group? And with that, thank you, everybody.
And appreciate everybody adding to the chat. We're going to be saving everything that came in from the Q&A in the chat and wrapping those into that final slide from everybody's input. And then we'll be sharing that on our on the meetings and events calendar. I think Marion posted a link to that. That is the location for all of our and absolutely anything and everything having to do with this TRIG. So want to make sure that you guys have that and make sure that you're also signed up for the listserv, so you get email messages from us about any upcoming meetings relating to the Advanced Clean Fleet. Thank you so much for attending and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.